Hey my duck YouTube, welcome back to a new video with Rams fan at YT. I know, it's been a while. I will explain everything. Firstly, I do want to apologise for not uploading in a while. The reason for that is long and varied. First of all, I moved to Newcastle, although I am in Derby right now. I will be next week in Newcastle, so the next time you see a video which isn't tomorrow's is going to be in Newcastle, and I couldn't get my old computer's Wi-Fi to connect, so I've got a completely new computer now. Typically the microphone won't work. I think I've got it working now, so you should be able to hear me when I upload this, but that also was part of a delay until I could finally get the microphone to work. I have also rearranged the schedule. It will now be Mondays and Tuesdays I uploading, mainly due to other things. Please do let me know if you want to see any non-league games, because I am considering doing a bit of a non-league watching in the northeast. But you're probably all here to watch a video about me talking about Hartlepool United, their history. I mean, it is Series 4 still, technically. Episode 11, is it now? We stopped really weirdly halfway through. Well, Hartlepool's origins can be traced back to 1881, when West Hartlepool Amateur Football Club were founded. They later joined as founder members of a Durham FA in 1883. In 1889, West Hartlepool subsequently joined the new Northern League before winning the FA Amateur Cup in 1905, beating Clapton 3-2. Partly as a result of this victory, the opportunity for a professional team arose in 1908, when West Hartlepool Rugby Club went bust, leaving their stadium, the Victoria Ground, vacant. The stadium was bought and the current club was founded under the name Hartlepool United Football Athletic Company on the 1st of June 1908, representing both the town of West Hartlepool and the original settlement of Hartlepool, known locally as Old Hartlepool, although they're now much the same place. On the 2nd of September 1908, Hartlepool's played their first match at Victoria Park, defeating Newcastle United 6-0. The new team joined the professional North Eastern League in 1908, and West Hartlepool managed to continue for a few seasons. However, it was not long before they broke up, leaving Hartlepool United as the only team in town. In 1910, the club took over the assets and liabilities of West Hartlepool, who had been dissolved that year. And in 1921, Hartlepools were elected to the newly formed Football League, joining the Football League 3rd Division. On the 27th of August 1921, Hartlepools played their first ever Football League match, defeating Wrexham 2-0. In 1921-22, Hartlepools finished their first Football League campaign in 4th place. On the 31st of August 1946, Hartlepools played their first game after World War II, drawing 1-1 with Barrow. In 1956, Hartlepools narrowly lost 1-0 to First Division champions Chelsea in the FA Cup. In the subsequent FA Cup campaign, Hartlepools lost 4-3 to Manchester United, and the attendance of 17,426 remains the club's highest attendance. Hartlepools managed to fight back from 3-0 down to level the game at 3-3 before Manchester United scored a late winner. The Red Devils manager Matt Busby described it as the most exciting match I've ever watched in his autobiography. In 1956-57, Hartlepools finished second to Derby County, missing out on promotion to the 2nd Division. In 1958, the club were placed in the newly formed 4th Division. And during 1959, Hartlepools defeated Barrow 10-1, a club record victory for a league match which remains to this day. Brian Clough was invited to manage Hartlepools in 1965 at the age of 30, and his reaction was, "I don't fancy the place," but he took the job anyway alongside Peter Taylor, In order to generate funds for the club, Clough visited every pub in town. In May 1966, Clough gave future European Cup winning captain John McGovern his professional debut aged 16 years old. Although after Clough and Taylor left for Derby County, the club did maintain their form and were promoted for the first time in their history after defeating Swansea Town 2-0. In 1968, the S and the United were dropped from the team name of Hartlepool United, and this was due to the merger of West Hartlepool with a older, smaller town of Hartlepool and the village of Hart into one new borough named Hartlepool. However, Hartlepool were relegated the following season after finishing in 22nd place. Under Len Ashurst, who became manager in 1971, the team slowly began to revive after years of largely indifferent form. In 1971-72 season, it saw a welcome improvement to 18th and possibly saved the club. Barrow, who had finished bottom the previous year, were voted out in favour of Hereford United, despite having improved to 22nd. The club once again avoided the re-election zone in 1972-73, finishing in 20th place. But with 4 successive finishes, either in or not far from the bottom 4, and strong challenges coming in from non-league sides, the club needed to show signs of improvement, and Ashurst did precisely that, finishing in 11th in 1973-74. He then left the club to manage Gillingham. Ken Hale took over and guided the team to 13th and 14th over the next 2 seasons, and the club also reached the League Cup 4th round in 1974-75, which is still a club record actually, where they lost a replay to eventual winners Aston Villa. However, 1976-77 saw a return to the doldrums. Hale was sacked after failing to win any of the first 9 games at the start of October. His successor, Billy Horner, could not stop the rot either, and the team finished in 22nd place. Again, there was a strong challenge from non-league in the form of Wimbledon. However, as the club was seeking re-election for the first time in 6 years, it was Workington, bottom for a second successive year, that made way. Over the close season, the team's name was changed to its current form of Hartlepool United. A tragedy struck the club a few weeks before the end of the season when 20-year-old player Dave Wiggett was killed in a car crash. A marginal improvement to the 21st the following year again saw the club applying to stay in the league, and again a strong non-league competition, this time from Wigan Athletic, and that was enough to dispose of Southport. It seemed to be only a matter of time before Hartlepool United followed the same way. Once again then, it was a huge relief for the supporters that Horner managed to make a considerable improvement the following season. A large part of this was due to the strike partnership of Bob Newton and Keith Houchin. The latter would be the club's lead scorer in each of the following 4 seasons. There was also a relative success in the FA Cup, with Crystal Palace being defeated at Victoria Park, thanks to 2 goals from Newton as the club made it to the 4th round. 1978-79 saw a finish in 13th place. 19th the following season was still enough to stay clear of a re-election zone, and then 1980-81 saw the team produce its best season in over a decade, never being out of the top 10 and looking promotion contenders for a long spell before falling away to finish 9th. Financial issues were, however, making waves off the pitch, and in particular the ownership of the ground. The town council were approached by the club with a view of buying the ground in January 1977, and although this was initially turned down, negotiations continued. In February 1978, a deal seemed to have been agreed. However, Chairman Vince Barker accused the council of delaying the deal when it was not complete 12 months later. Barker would accuse the council of trying to renege on the deal in July 1980, and even threatened to move the club out of the town amidst rumours that he was prepared to sell the club and allow it to be moved to Scarborough. The 1981-82 season saw the team finish in 14th place, despite both Houchin and Newton scoring 18 goals. But their partnership was drawing to a close, and with it, 4 seasons of relative success. The club was running into financial difficulties under Vince Barker, and both forwards would be sold for the following season for fees that failed to reflect their value to the club but allowed bills to be paid. The team finished in 22nd, back in the re-election zone. Billy Horner handed over his duties at the end of March to John Duncan. Duncan's time at the club was limited. Having been appointed in April, just 9 weeks later, he left to take over Chesterfield. Hartlepool appointed McDoherty, however, after 6 months, and with the team struggling, he too left the club. Even for Hartlepool, 4 managers in the space of 8 months was somewhat farcical. The fact that the decision was made to reappoint Billy Horner, initially on a temporary measure, although he would actually remain in charge until November 1986, made the situation even worse. Dissatisfaction with the club's board grew. Attendances fell, performances remained poor, an eventual finish of 23rd, and a club record low attendance of 790 for a game with Stockport County on the 5th of May 1984 showed a club that looked to be going nowhere. The application for re-election was again successful, with the club once more polling the lowest figure of the league clubs, and the result was secured on the back of an agreement being made amongst the club chairman to enter into the meaningful dialogue over direct promotion and relegation with the Alliance Premier League. Many felt that without that agreement being made, Hartlepool United would have been voted out because of their perennial re-election applications. Maidstone United were the unfortunately non-league champions to have the Football League door slammed in their faces for the second year running. During the close season, Chairman Barker left the club and John Smart took over. Once again though, Horner managed to produce an improvement to 19th, before making a team that looked capable of winning promotion. After a shaky start to the 1985-86 campaign, the team climbed into the top 3 by mid-October, and were still in a promotion spot in early March, and eventually faded slightly to finish in 7th place. Any hopes that Horner might lead the club to promotion faded shortly after the start of the 1986-87 season. After drawing the first 4 games of the season, Pools then lost the next 4 before eventually recording their first win against Lincoln City in the 9th game. A further 6 games without a win were enough to see the club looking in serious danger of being the first club to be automatically relegated from the Football League, and saw Horner depart. He was replaced by John Bird, a former player at the club, and form improved slightly. But although the team eventually finished in relative safety in 18th, they were only 3 points ahead of Lincoln City, who suffered relegation. One peculiarity of the season concerned Middlesbrough. The financially struggling Teessiders had been locked out of their ground at Ayresome Park, but were due to play a home game on the opening day of the season. Had they not fulfilled that fixture, they would have been expelled from the league, and so Hartlepool stepped into the breach and offered the use of the Victoria ground. After Hartlepool's draw with Cardiff City in the afternoon, Middlesbrough played their game with Port Vale the same evening. The following season saw an improvement to 16th place, this time comfortably above relegated Newport County, and in fact only 11 points from the playoff places. However, a poor run towards the end of the season, 4 points from the last 10 games, cost the team any hope of promotion. Notable events from this season included both Paul Baker and Andy Toman scoring 20 or more goals in all competitions, and beating neighbours Sunderland in the Associate Members' Cup, before eventually losing out to Preston North End in the Northern semi-final. Bird had, however, made something of a name for himself as a manager, and when an early season form saw Hartlepool United in 2nd place at the end of September 1988, he left the club to join York City. Former Newcastle United captain Bobby Moncur was appointed to succeed Bird, but failed to inspire the team. Results suffered, with Hartlepool eventually finishing 19th. 5 successive league defeats opened the 1989-90 season, and Moncur eventually resigned in November, with the club rooted to the bottom of the table, having taken just 9 points from 18 games with 46 goals conceded. The new manager appointed, though, would become a legend of the club. Cyril Knowles had been a distinguished player and had a growing reputation as a manager. With the addition of several new signings, he achieved a remarkable turnaround. From having 9 points from 19 games, Knowles led the side to 55 by the end of the season, and a safe 19th place in the table. Even better was to follow the following season, with the partnership of Paul Baker and Joe Allen working well in attack. The team were in the top 10 for much of the season and have a good chance of reaching a playoff place. Then a tragedy struck in February 1991 when Knowles was diagnosed with brain cancer and Alan Murray took over on a temporary basis. Under Murray, the team's form improved further, and the club went into the final day of the season as one of several clubs that could win not just promotion, but the title. A 3-1 win over Northampton Town was enough to secure promotion in third place. However, Knowles was still suffering from cancer in June 1991, and Murray was given the manager's job on a permanent basis, as Knowles had now undergone 3 operations but still had the cancer. And tragically, he died on the 30th of August 1991 at the relatively young age of only 47. Although Allen signed for Chelsea over the close season, Murray was able to retain the majority of the squad, and also signed players such as Andy Saville and Lenny John Rose. As the club at Rose finished in a highly respectable 11th place in the third division, the 1992-93 season saw the club playing in the new Division 2, as the formation of the Premier League has caused a relabelling of divisions. By October, the team was in second place, level on points with leaders at West Bromwich Albion. The club remained in the playoff hunt until New Year, and then achieved one of the best results in its history after beating Crystal Palace 1-0 in the FA Cup third round, the first time that Hartlepool had beaten a top division side. However, this would prove to be the end of the club's success for several years. It was revealed shortly afterwards, that cup win, that the club were in financial difficulties, and to make ends meet, a number of players were released or sold. And the club set an unenviable record of going 1,227 minutes without scoring. During this run, Murray was sacked and replaced by Viv Busby. The club eventually escaped relegation, finishing 16th. The following season was an unmitigated disaster. With no money to bring in players, the team struggled all season. Busby was replaced in November 1993 by John McPhail, but as his name implies, he could do little as the team remained in relegation places from November until the end of the season. Relegation was assured following a 7-0 defeat at Rotherham United. The final day of the season saw the team thrashed 8-1 by Plymouth Argyle at the Victoria Ground. The next 5 seasons saw a constant struggle and a succession of managers. Gibson finally sold the club to local businessman Harold Hornsey, who at least was able to financially stabilise the club, but with little money available for players, times were hard. McPhail left in the early 1994-95 season and was replaced by Dave McCreary. He was replaced towards the end of the same season by Keith Houchen, who had returned as a player. Houchen was in turn replaced after only 18 months by Mick Tate. Meanwhile, the club finished in 18th, 20th twice and 17th. There was also a change of ownership in 1997, and Hornsey sold the club to an IOR Limited, with Ken Hodcroft becoming chairman. Matters came to a head in 1998-99. Tate's side was struggling, and even the signing of former England international Peter Beardsley had not changed the club's fortunes. Tate was sacked in January 1999, and Chris Turner was appointed, despite being 4 points adrift at the bottom of the league at Easter. Turner was able to prevent the club being relegated, and under Turner, matters did improve drastically. In 1999-2000, they reached the playoffs, but were beaten by local rivals Darlington in the semi-finals. Pools qualified for the playoffs for the next 2 seasons as well, though on both occasions they were defeated in the semi-finals by Blackpool and Cheltenham Town respectively. In 2002-2003, Hartlepool finished in second place and won automatic promotion to the second division for the 3rd time in the club's history. Turner had, however, left to take over Sheffield Wednesday partway through the season, with Mike Newell replacing him. Hartlepool had been at the top of the league for the majority of the season, but could only win one match from their final 4, meaning that Rushden and Diamonds won the league. Newell was relieved of his duties over the close season, with Neil Cooper replacing him in June 2003. Hartlepool enjoyed an exceptional campaign in 2003-04, with highlights including an 8-1 victory over Grimsby Town and a trip to Sunderland in the third round of the FA Cup, followed by 9,109 away supporters. They finished 6th and secured a playoff place on the final day of the season with a 1-1 draw away at Swindon Town. However, they lost to third place Bristol City in the playoffs by 3-2 on aggregate. The season also saw Ethan Williams called up to the Wales squad and looked to become the second only Hartlepool player to ever win an international cap while at the club. However, he had withdrawn due to injury. The club finished 6th in the league again in 2004-05 season, despite the departure of Cooper just days before the end of the season due to personal issues. In the playoff semi-final, they defeated Tranmere Rovers 6-5 on penalties after both sides had won each of their home legs 2-0. The club failed to win promotion, losing 4-2 to Sheffield Wednesday after extra time in front of an attendance of 59,808 in the playoff final. Hartlepool had been leading 2-1 with 8 minutes of regular time to go, but a controversial penalty decision in the 82nd minute, which also saw Chris Westwood sent off, allowed Sheffield Wednesday to level the scores, making it 2-2 at the end of 90 minutes. Hartlepool struggled in extra time and conceded 2 further goals, and following this achievement, Cooper's assistant Martin Scott was appointed as manager. The 2005-06 season saw the side slip down to the division to the relegation places, helped in part by poor management, an indecisive boardroom and key player injuries. Manager Martin Scott was suspended after an alleged fight with a player in the changing rooms, which resulted in his dismissal. Youth team coach Paul Stevenson was put in charge until the end of the season, aided by former manager Chris Turner, who returned to the club as director of sport. Nevertheless, he could not prevent the club being relegated to the 4th tier in May 2006. In June 2006, Danny Wilson was appointed as the new manager. Under Wilson, Hartlepool returned to League One at the first time of asking, finishing second behind champions Walsall. On the 1st of January 2007, Hartlepool United equalled the all-time Football League record of consecutive wins without conceding a goal by winning 1-0 at Mansfield Town. This had been the 8th straight win without conceding. Hartlepool sealed promotion with an away win at Wycombe Wanderers, but missed out on the title on the final day of the season after losing 2-1 at home to Bristol Rovers. However, it was a very successful season, which saw Hartlepool go 23 games unbeaten during the season. They maintained their League One status by finishing 15th in the 2007-08 season. On the 19th of October 2007, tragedy struck when midfielder Michael Maidens died aged 20 years old. In December 2008, Danny Wilson was sacked, while the club were unbeaten in 4 games and well clear of relegation zone. The board felt that Wilson could take the club no further. Chris Turner was quickly returned to the managerial position, combining with a role with his existing position as the club's director of sport. In the 2008-09 season, Hartlepool celebrated their centenary season with a run in the FA Cup and League Cup, beating Premier League sides Stoke City and West Brom. Poole stayed up on this final day of the season despite losing 4-1 to Bristol Rovers. In 2009-10, Hartlepool finished in 20th place. Hartlepool had received a 3-point deduction for fielding an eligible player during a victory over Brighton. The club survived on the final day of the season with a 0-0 draw against Brentford, being enough to keep them in League One, albeit on a goal difference basis alone. Chris Turner resigned from the club a few weeks into the following season, and Mick Wadsworth took over on a temporary basis before being appointed permanently a month later. The 2010-11 season ended up going much the same as the previous one, with the club in the playoff contention in the middle of a campaign, before falling away as the season went on. However, the drop in Hartlepool's form was not as severe as it had been in the previous 2 seasons, and they finished in 16th place, well clear of a relegation zone. A peculiarity of this season saw Hartlepool's goalkeeper Scott Flinders score a late equaliser in a 2-2 draw with AFC Bournemouth. The club started the following 2011-12 season well, but a bad run of form resulted in the sacking of Wadsworth in December, with former manager Neil Cooper returning to the club as his replacement. While Cooper was not able to get the club back to their early form, the side stayed generally consistent for the remainder of the season and secured a 13th place finish. The following 2012-13 season started with just 1 win in 14 league games. And in the wake of a defeat by Bury, which moved Hartlepool to the bottom of the table, Cooper resigned, bringing an end to his second spell after less than a year. He was replaced by Livingston manager John Hughes, and while the club's form gradually did improve, they were ultimately unable to overcome the first half of the season, which saw them secure 9 points and just 1 win from their first 23 games. Hartlepool finished second bottom of the league after 6 seasons in the 3rd tier. Hughes publicly stated that he wanted to remain as manager despite relegation. However, he was sacked by Hodcroft and replaced by Colin Cooper. After an extensive overhaul of the playing squad during the summer, Hartlepool finished the 2013-14 season in 19th place that season, the lowest finish in 15 years. In the 2014-15 season, Cooper resigned a few weeks into the campaign following a 3-0 home defeat to Hartlepool United, which left Hartlepool at the bottom of the Football League. Paul Murray replaced Cooper only to be sacked just 2 months later, with the club 6 points adrift at the bottom of League 2 and having just suffered an FA Cup elimination at the hands of non-league Blythe Spartans. Ken Hodcroft resigned and sold the club to Peter Harris in December 2014. Harris's first decision was to appoint former Tranmere Rovers manager Ronnie Moore to the manager's job. The takeover ultimately fell through due to Harris and his associates being involved in dubious activities, with the club reverting to Hodcroft's ownership, and after being 10 points adrift in the bottom place at the turn of the year, in what had been termed the Great Escape and Miracle, a revival in form saw Hartlepool escape relegation places and secure survival in the penultimate game of the season. June 2015 saw a change of ownership, handing over to Essex recruitment firm JP&G, which was liquidated in 2017, which appointed director Gary Coxall as chairman. By February 2016, with Hartlepool in 21st place, JP&G decided to sack Ronnie Moore and replaced him with Craig Hignett. Poole stabilised under Hignett, ending the season in 16th place. The 2016-17 season started with Hignett being sacked in January 2017 and replaced by Dave Jones. Form under Jones deteriorated further, with only 13 points gained from a possible 54. With 3 games to go, Hartlepool dropped into the relegation zone for the first time after a loss at home to Barnet. The result prompted a passionate rant by Jeff Stelling live on Soccer Saturday, which resulted in the sacking of Dave Jones. The final round of fixtures meant that either Newport County or Hartlepool would be relegated for National League. After being 1-0 down to Doncaster Rovers, Hartlepool looked doomed. Substitute Devontae Rodney scored 2 unanswered goals to leave Hartlepool above relegation zone. However, an empty 9th minute goal for Newport consigned Hartlepool to non-league football for the first time after 96 years in the Football League. Craig Harrison was appointed as manager ahead of the Hartlepool's first campaign in non-league. By November, off-field financial issues intensified, which coincided with a winless run of 11 games. In a statement, Pam Duxbury, then chairwoman, claimed that a number of legacy issues had consumed high financial and human resources, and the club needed £200,000 in order to survive. In response to the financial issues, fans set up a Just Giving page which raised just over £85,000, including donations from supporters across the UK. An initiative called Save Pools Day took place on the 20th of January 2018 for a fixture against Wrexham, where supporters from other clubs visited to raise funds via ticket sales and other fundraising methods. The poor run of form resulted in the sacking of Craig Harrison, and in February, He was replaced by caretaker manager Matthew Bates. In March 2018, Hartlepool Borough Council agreed to lend the club £77,500 to help the club during its financial crisis. Hartlepool won 3 consecutive matches to pull away from relegation places and finally guaranteed safety from relegation in April. Hartlepool's first season in non-league ended with the club avoiding liquidation when Raj Singh bought the club in April, and Hartlepool ultimately finished a turbulent season in 15th place. Poole started the 2018-19 season brightly. However, 6 consecutive defeats, culminating in Hartlepool's lowest league home attendance since 1998, forced Raj Singh to sack Bates after 9 months in charge. He was replaced by the experienced Richard Money. However, after only 6 matches in charge, Money decided the job wasn't for him and switched roles with Director of Football Craig Hignett in January 2019. Hignett guided Hartlepool to a disappointing 16th place finish, the lowest league finish in the club's history. Early in 2019-20, Raj Singh took the decision to sack Craig Hignett and replaced him with Dave Challinor. Pool's league form improved under Challinor. However, the COVID-19 pandemic forced the cancellation of the season after 39 games, with the league positions decided on a points per game basis, with Hartlepool finishing in 12th. In 2020-21, Hartlepool earned promotion to League 2 at the 4th attempt via the playoffs. The season was defined by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the vast majority of fixtures being played behind closed doors. Hartlepool finished 4th in the regular season, meaning that they met Bromley in the playoff eliminator, which they won 3-2. In the semi-final, Hartlepool won 1-0 at Stockport County, thanks to a goal by Rhys Oates. In 2021 playoff final, Hartlepool played Torquay United at Ashton Gate, with Hartlepool taking the lead via Luke Armstrong in the first half. However, Torquay equalised in the 95th minute thanks to a header by the goalkeeper Lucas Coverlan to take the match to extra time and then penalties. Hartlepool managed to win the shootout 5-4, which ended their 4-year spell in non-league. After a 4-year hiatus from league football, Hartlepool won their first match back in League 2, beating Crawley Town 1-0. In September 2021, Challinor signed a new 3-year contract. However, in November 2021, he decided to join non-league side Stockport County. In December 2021, former defender Graham Lee was announced as the new manager. He was dismissed after only 5 months, following a run of 11 games with only 1 win. Hartlepool ultimately finished a turbulent season back in the Football League in 17th, whilst maintaining 2 strong cup runs. Pools reached the 4th round of the FA Cup before succumbing to Premier League side Crystal Palace 2-0, backed by nearly 5,000 away fans, and in the EFL Trophy, Hartlepool reached the semi-finals for the first time before losing out to penalties to Rotherham United. In June 2022, Cove Rangers manager Paul Hartley was appointed as the new manager, but could only last 3 months before a disastrous start to the 2022-23 season left them without a win after 9 league games. Keith Curry was appointed as his replacement on an interim basis before becoming permanent manager in December 2022. We will see ultimately what the future lies in store for Hartlepool, because I'm not entirely sure they've got the best squad to survive in League 2, but they are in and amongst it with, at the moment, Gillingham definitely not doing that well, and a couple of other teams as well in League 2's relegation battling it out, Colchester and amongst the mates. But thank you very much for watching. Please, I do want to thank you if you did stay loyal all this time, and please do subscribe if you're new around here. Don't know what I'm doing tomorrow in terms of video wise. I will be planning that as soon as this has gone up. We'll come up with something. But goodbye for now.